Hey everyone, Katrina here from CopySmiths.com, or more relevant is I'm from the e-commerce fuel community, really. That's kind of where a lot of this began. But anyway, gosh, that was a wild ride. I'm back in Australia now and I've slept for a day or two, and the adrenaline and all the people I met and all the feedback, and it was one of the best ECF lives I've been to. It was absolutely brilliant. So thank you to Audrey and Patrick and Andrew for organising it. But what a wild ride. Anyway, and the generative AI breakout that Anne and I did was it's fascinating. There was standing room only in that room, which means I think that the community really wants to understand more about AI. The things that I heard from people after this talk was that they want to know how to actually use it in their teams. They can see that there's something there, but they're not quite sure how to use it in their teams. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be meeting with a whole bunch of people, experts in this field, expert e-commerce people, and I'm going to be creating screencasts that literally walk through how we as e-commerce store owners can apply these tools, these AI, this technology to our businesses. And so you'll get some real, actual things that people are doing, and then you can riff off those ideas in your heads. But anyway, I'll do more on that later. And then also later as well, as part of our the breakout, I gave everyone these projects that they could do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to now go through, and I will, after this screencast, I'll go through each of these projects and actually do them for you and show you how to use them. And with all of these things, you can use them in your team. So you're very welcome to share these screencasts. Usually in e-commerce fuel, we say that you're not allowed to share anything that's in e-commerce fuel outside. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure there's nothing in this presentation that I do or in a few others that have anything kind of private to our community. But so in this case, you're very welcome to share these screencasts that I'm doing with your team members if you find them helpful. Anyway, let's get into it. So this was this breakout session. I'll go through it and I'll add a little bit more detail to it. So for people who already saw the breakout, there'll be a little bit more detail in this as well. First thing is people think it's kind of obvious how we would use as a copywriting team. So, well, for those of you who don't know, we do blog writing for e-commerce stores, and the result of our work is that most of our clients receive a lot more organic traffic, and then that organic traffic, we are able to move that organic traffic through to your product pages and your category pages. So that's kind of the only thing we do. We're very specialized in just bringing organic traffic, creating a channel for you, and then moving it to your product and your category pages. Now, you would think that we would use AI to write our content. We don't. AI is a very bad writer. And even though GPT-4 has just been released and I've got access to it and I'm going to show you it, we'll see if I'm blown away in a few minutes by it. But we use AI, generative AI, for ideation, for creativity. We're able to spark new ideas and anything, and we can use it to create certain types of content. So I was just talking to Charlie, who is also interested in AI. He runs a business called Crowd Create. And I was just saying to him, why not use AI? So he sells to influencers. He allows influencers to buy merchandise from him. And I said to him, why not create ringtones with the favorite influencer singing you happy birthday, but using the AI to insert Charlie's name or Katrina's name into the AI. So you can literally build product that you can sell to customers with AI. And that's kind of what we're going to do as well. We're going to use the generative AI to build products that our clients can use to gain more organic traffic. So anyway, so I'll go into that a bit more later, but that's kind of why we're using it. And that's one of the use cases. So let's get into the actual breakout. I've got my slides over here. So, I'm sure you guys don't mind that I've got my whole screen shown, because I just like to orient you to where we are and what we're up to. So you all know this guessing game here called Family Feud. I'm sure it's huge in the US. We've got our own version in Australia. But in this case, maybe the family, the people, the brains, the humans are guessing, what are some major highlights of your life, or what are some major anniversaries, or what are some big parties in your life? I don't know what the question was. But you can see here that the idea, it's going to flick around me. The idea is that you have to guess. You have to guess what the answer is going to be. So I want to talk to you about generative AI being a guessing game, and I'm going to take you through some examples that'll become more complex as we go along. If I was to say to you, and this is just, again, something that I made up that happened to turn out quite well, but Taylor Swift is, I don't know, we could say a singer-songwriter. She's an American. She's a woman. She's a Grammy award-winning artist. There's so many things we could say Taylor Swift is. And what happens is we can guess. So it's a little bit like those 3 guesses that you saw in the Family Feud game here. We can literally just take 3 guesses. So we might guess Taylor Swift is a singer-songwriter. Taylor Swift is an American. Taylor Swift is a woman. We can guess those, and there is a probability attached to each of those ideas as to whether it's true or not, or whether it's going to be the most common guess. So just like in Family Feud, they sort of say, this many of the audience also guessed that answer, so that's the most popular answer. We can give a probability to what the next sequence of words are for when we say Taylor Swift is. And I've made up these probabilities just for the sake of this exercise. Taylor Swift is a melodic bird, has a much lower level of probability because first reason is because it doesn't appear in the search engines. It's not something that normally we would say about her. But as humans, you and I, if I said to you Taylor Swift is a melodic bird, you would know as a human, you would interpret that result. You would say, well, that was an unpredictable thing to say. It wasn't a very predictable thing to say. Well, it didn't have a high probability of being said. But I still get what you mean. And in actual fact, it's quite creative. It's quite, the probability of that being said, the predictability is quite low. I'm using the word predictability very, very specifically. In this screenshot here, you can see Taylor Swift is a singer-songwriter. I've literally just queried Google, and we can see, so Taylor, I'll do this for you. Taylor Swift is you can see I've already done this, singer-songwriter. Let me just grab that for you so we can see in actual results. And see, Google's now going to give me this, of course. But you can see here, Taylor Swift is a singer-songwriter. So someone has already written that. And you can see that there are 16,000 results for that phrase, for sort of something around that phrase. So Taylor Swift is a singer-songwriter. Taylor Swift is a singer-songwriter. Taylor Swift is a singer-songwriter. So in my example, we actually had it, oh no, that's still the same. Okay, cool. So in this example, there's now 16,000 results. There were 15,000, but we can literally see that result showing up. Okay, so if we, though, say Taylor Swift is a melodic bird, there are no results whatsoever because that hasn't been said before. That's a unique phrase that I just kind of made up right on the spot because my brain is not as predictable. This is where this is a thing called prompt, I won't go into that. This is why I, as a human, can get across metaphors better than the AIs can. So a melodic bird is a very unusual thing to say. There's a high level of creativity behind that. We'll talk about that another time. So I asked ChatGPT, I will give you a task to complete a sentence. You must use the most obvious words that describe this person. Only use 1 or 2 words because I was just trying to prove my point. When I didn't say only use 1 or 2 words, it gave me a whole paragraph. It's a little verbose at times. Complete the sentence, Taylor Swift is. Okay. So it told me a singer-songwriter. So the only prompt that I gave it was this one here. This is really important to understand that this is called a prompt. And this is where people with English majors, people who are very creative writers, who are very good at giving instructions, who are very succinct and who are very precise with their instructions are going to come to the fore over the next few years because prompt engineers, people who can prompt the AI with instructions, are going to be very valuable in your teams because they can control the AI. They can give the robot specific instructions. So, and this is just a very simple example. And then I said, give me 3 more results because I wanted to see whether it would come up with Taylor Swift is an American or a woman. It didn't. She's an actress, a philanthropist, and a record breaker. Okay, and I did give it some limits here. So I'm just going to grab that text there. Just had to type that out because I'm going to show you what I'm going to do is this is the old ChatGPT and I'm going to put it into the new ChatGPT and we'll see what it comes up with. But first I'm just going to continue with this talk just because I really want you to keep the thread of this argument of what I'm trying to explain to you because it's going to get more complex in a minute. So we had this result where ChatGPT was able to give me a very predictable, this is a really important word for you to understand, a very predictable result because predictability is key. Okay, now you can see the change that I've made here. I've said to ChatGPT, so ChatGPT is a word prediction engine that is an app that is built on the DaVinci 003 model that is a large language model by OpenAI. That won't understand much. You won't. Maybe that much doesn't make sense at the moment. Think of ChatGPT as the app that Excel is for Microsoft. So OpenAI is the Microsoft, although they've just acquired it. OpenAI is a business, like Microsoft is a business. ChatGPT is a layer, is an app that sits on all the smarts of Microsoft. ChatGPT is a layer, is an app that sits on all the smarts of OpenAI, just like Excel is a piece of software that sits on top of the Microsoft Office platform. Okay, so think of it like that. That's all that ChatGPT is. It's just a tool. It's just happens to be a very interesting tool, but it really only does one thing. Okay. You can control how that tool becomes more creative by giving it instructions that it understands. And this is what I'm talking to you about when if you hire a prompt engineer into your team, they will understand what maximum burstiness and perplexity means. Those are two key terms for telling the generative AI the kind of output that you want. So you only use one or two words, complete the sentence, Taylor Swift is. Okay, and you can see I can have a little error in here and it still understands, which is good. So omnipresently enigmatic. So you can see how that's a little bit more similar. It's closer to that example of melodic bird. We all know what enchantingly multifaceted means. It's not really keying into the fact that she's a singer and how I used melodic bird. So even though we use maximum burstiness and perplexity, which is kind of turning the temperature up. So again, it's turning down the predictability. It's lowering the temperature. Temperature is a really important word to understand as a prompt engineer. And when you turn the temperature up, what it does is it's increasing the burstiness and the perplexity. Burstiness is the amount of times that an unusual choice is made within a sequence, and the perplexity is how unusual that choice is within that sequence. So that's what those two terms kind of mean, sort of. So in this case, I was able to instruct the GPT to become more creative. But you can see in this case, even though it's more creative, omnipresently enigmatic is like, it's a nice thing to say, but it doesn't really get to the core of the fact that she's a melodic bird, which is a singer-songwriter. Okay, can you sort of see where I'm going with this? So it's got these little quirks where if you don't look closely at the output, you won't realize that it's not actually as good as it needs to be just yet. But we now have ChatGPT 4 and I'll test that in a minute. And I haven't tested it before, so I'm quite excited to do that right in front of you and see what's going on. This can be one of those reaction videos. Anyway, this is Bing. So Bing has purchased OpenAI for bazillions of dollars. It's purchased a portion of OpenAI. And what Bing Chat has done is Bing Chat has pulled in the ChatGPT tool, but a different model of it because it's quite different. It behaves quite differently. And of course, it wouldn't make sense for OpenAI to be acquired by someone who is then just going to wipe them out of business. So it's the same tech, but they're just sort of, their outputs are different. So I said the same sort of thing. I said, complete this sentence, etc. And Bing's chatbot, which is the OpenAI, which is the same as ChatGPT's model, but just a little bit different, tweaked. It said, is an American singer-songwriter who has achieved da 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 da. So it gave me, I wasn't able to get it to stick to just, it doesn't follow instructions as specifically as the ChatGPT 3.5 does. But what it does do is it does these citations, which are very cool. I think that our e-commerce stores that have like microfibewholesale.com, you know, those kinds of domains are going to show up a little bit more, and it's more obvious what they sell. But anyway, that's a different thing. That'll be a different conversation I'll have with Jeff Oxford about what we think is going to happen with SEO. So we'll do a screencast about that a bit later. Jeff Oxford's the SEO in the ECF group. So then I said, give me 2 more sentence completions. And you can see that it doesn't really follow specifically my instructions. It's trying to be more of a conversation engine. And then this is when it gets, then I said, give me 2 more sentence completions with maximum perplexity and burstiness. This triggers the guardrails. This is another term that you'll start to hear more about when you start using generative AI. Generative AI, the companies are putting in guardrails so that people can't do what are called prompt injection. So think of them as prompt attacks, where people can't manipulate the AIs into mistruths or into sort of saying wildly inaccurate things or getting into arguments. So there's quite a few experiments that some very creatively funny people have been doing, where they've been getting into arguments with Bing Chat and making there was one where one of the fellows managed to get Bing Chat to insist that he break up with his wife and that they were in love, and it was this whole thing, that there's this whole ridiculousness that went on. And of course, because it became viral, it was a bit of a PR disaster or a PR benefit, I don't know, for Microsoft. So what they've done recently is really put the guardrails up. So any kind of trigger like this, where I'm trying to control the outputs, Bing has said, nope, not playing that game. Whereas ChatGPT is quite happy to go along with that game. So now we're going to get on to this next concept. Okay. Because I'm going to show you how it works in terms of this predictability aspect. So I'm getting a bit closer to the what I'm going to talk to you about with the predictability aspect. So write 2 short sentences about walking a dog, and it does that. Let me just go in here a little bit so that you can see a bit more. Other way. Oopsies. View. Sorry. View. Oh, hang on. Same. Let's go to 200. Okay. So I've got here, write 2 short sentences about walking a dog. So it's a bit similar to that Taylor Swift example. Walking a dog is a great way to provide exercise for both the dog and the owner. It can also be a fun bonding activity. Okay. Rewrite text, those 2 short sentences, but increase the temperature. Now, remember how I said that the temperature was all about burstiness and perplexity? And so that's what it does. This is, it makes it more, in this case, ChatGPT has decided to interpret the word temperature as making it more emotionally charged, which is fine for the for this example. But you can see the words that it's now using. Absolute, amazing, the wind in your hair, the sun on your skin, the love of your furry companion. So it's really increasing the creative use of words, mainly adjectives, sort of pushing those sorts of words in. And it's trying to find an emotional connection with the reader. Okay. So rewrite the text with 2 short sentences with the maximum burstiness and complexity. So I just sort of said increase the temperature. I didn't really define how much. And now it's going to do with the maximum burstiness and perplexity. Okay, so now we've got things like not for a walk, but for a stroll. And now instead of a dog, walking a dog, we've got furry friend for a stroll. So we're starting to get far more creative words. You simply cannot beat the sheer exhilaration of hitting the pavement and feeling the thrill of great outdoors. Ninja-like reflexes. There's nothing quite like the rush of walking your beloved pet by your side. Okay. Did they use rush before? It hasn't. But it's used things like the thrill and the rush, that sort of stuff. So it hasn't been repetitive, which is great. But you can sort of see that we've now taken it from just a sort of a more prosaic sort of description of walking a dog's great, and it's a fun bonding activity. And it's really layered in, it's really layered it on thick with this kind of text. Now, what it still does, and I'll show you what the effect is. So let me just go here. So I'll just go over here. So in this screen here, we've got the first two sentences. This is a tool called, this is the tool, it's not really got a name. This is the tool provided by Hugging Face. Hugging Face is a competitor to OpenAI. So they are also developing AI tools, okay? But they are, in this particular case, they just have an AI detection tool, an AI text detection tool that's free, cheap and easy, and I'll show it to you in a minute. So I put in those two sentences, and what Hugging Face does is it says, well, the prediction based on just the 31 tokens, so tokens are, I think it's about 8 characters, so it doesn't sort of do it on words, it does it on characters, so you need around 300 plus tokens to get a really good result, but we're just going to go with this for the sake of this example. So some of my, I am simplifying some of these concepts for the sake of just getting a particular concept across to you. So just take it with a grain of salt, right? So anyway, so this is 99% fake. All right, so because it's so predictable. Whereas if I go over to here, hopefully, how do I get over here? Why are you not scrolling for me? Here we go. If I go over to here, this is the one where I asked it to increase the temperature. And notice how the fake score declines. Instead of being 99%, it's now at 28%. So Hugging Face is saying, Hugging Face is it's that emoji where you hug, like it's that big love heart hug. Anyway, that's the origin of that funny business name. Hugging Face, it was based on an emoji. Geeks, huh? Anyway, I love it. Increase temperature. So this is where we increase the temperature, and that's because the word choices became a little less predictable, because we had asked the GPT to, basically by saying increase the temperature, to increase that burstiness and perplexity. So remember, the burstiness and the perplexity is how unusual the choices are and how often those unusual choices appear. So now, I can't scroll that way. Okay, so now this one is the maximum burstiness and perplexity result. And you can see how the fake score's gone from 28% down to 14%. And that's because it's a really kind of an unusual way to write. But I would say there's a lot of hyperbole and exaggeration in here. So in this case, if you got a piece of text from a writer and it just was a bit like, just calm down, calm the fun. We're just walking a dog. It's not like the sheer, pleasure of being alive and the rush of walking. There's no rush in walking your dog, unless of course your dog is just dragging you down the pavement. So you can see essentially that what the ChatGPT is doing is it's hyperbole. It's exaggeration. There's no reason to, the sheer thrill. There's no thrill of the great outdoors unless you're like plummeting off a cliff. So it's not, just because it passes the AI detectors doesn't mean that it's a good result. Okay, so then the final one is, I added a few unpredictable edits. So I added, just another word here, a favoured furry friend, for a little bit of alliteration, just for a bit of fun, and incredibly amazing thrill. And so this sort of writing, for examples, verbose, it doesn't really, it's just fluff. It doesn't really help. It doesn't really help with creating, a better message for the reader. And the other thing I just added an M dash and a colon, and then it's very easy to see that it now has a very low fake score. So in this case, you can see that, hang on, I'll just go here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start talking to you about ChatGPT being a word or a guessing engine. But because this has just crashed, I'm just going to stop this screencast and then I'll start another one in a second. Okay, hopefully this won't freeze again. All right, so ChatGPT is a word. It's actually a letter guessing engine. I'm just going to talk you through this concept now. So stick with me. It's all starting to come together. There is a fellow who has written, I wonder if I can just zoom this in a little bit. There's a fellow called Matt Wolfram, and he has written this very, very awesome paper about what is ChatGPT doing and why does it work. So, sorry, not Matt Wolfram. God, I've been saying his name wrong. Stephen Wolfram. And so this is where this has come from. So you can see here, think of this as like that example that I just gave you of Taylor Swift is. Stephen's used just a slightly different example. The best thing about AI is its ability to, and see how he's got the word learn, predict, make, understand with this probability next to them. So this is the probability model here. So the best thing about AI is its ability to, and it's just guessing what that next word is going to be. And then what it does is it says, well, now that I've guessed that the next word is learn, well, what's the next word after learn going to be? Well, learn, I don't know, well, from. Okay. Well, what could the next word after from be? Well, I don't know, it could be experience. And so it's literally stringing these words together repeatedly at each step, adding the word that has the top probability, specified in this code as the decision from the model. So the models are, anyway, I won't go into that. Okay. So, and you can see how it's associating in the data set, it's associating the word ability with like ability to, ability for, ability how, ability, what's going to be the next word? Okay, this diagram here is also great. I should find this because I've got an even better one. But so what it also does is in this example here, let's say we had a Wikipedia article on cats. You could expect that the letter A would appear quite often in an article about cats, just as you would expect the letter O to appear quite often in an article about dogs on Wikipedia. So the results are similar but not the same. The O is no doubt more common in the dogs article because after all it occurs in the word dog. If we take a large enough sample of English text, we can expect to eventually get at least fairly consistent results. And now this is really important here. I'm just gonna find that one because there's a bit after this that's really cool. Hang on 2 secs. All right, so here we are at this point in the article. So we've got this probability that the letter O is going to appear quite often. Now look what the models do. So here's a sample of what we get if we just generate a sequence of letters with these probabilities. Okay, so we've got lots of A. And this is literally what these models do. They just kind of say, okay, well, let's just throw a whole bunch. It's like alphabet soup. You remember alphabet soup when we were little kids? You'd get alphabet soup. You would get a bowl of soup and you try to make your name in your bowl of soup. So see all the little letters in the soup? You'd say, oh, well, let me see if I can make my name, K-A. But you've got this whole soup of letters and you're just trying to distill. Okay. So you can see here that what the GPT does is it says, okay, well, let's break this into words by just simply adding some spaces. Now, in the English language, we know that words are maybe a 1 letter long or 3 letters long or 8 letters long. They're very rarely 26 letters long. So what the ChatGPT does is it starts to just kind of add some spaces in, then adds more spaces in. Now, it's forcing a distribution of word lengths to what it is in English. So you can see here all these spaces. Now, if we were to squint our eyes, we would sort of think to ourselves, well, maybe that's a sentence, okay? Then what it does, this is so much fun. Then what it does is it says, what's the probability of a particular letter appearing next to another letter? So it's still got a little bit of a soup here. This is still a bit of a soup because doesn't really make sense. So what it says is, okay, how often does A and A appear next to each other? So I would say aardvark, so AAR. I put Leanna on the spot in the room and I said, Leanna, what's another one that's like AA? And she was like, ah. And then she came up to me and she's like, AAAH, She couldn't think of it at the time. We just thought that was very funny. That's a writing nerd joke there for everyone. So that was Leanna Patch's moment where she was put on the spot. Anyway, I won't dwell on it. So, but what about the probability of A and B appearing together? it's quite a high probability, really, when you think about it, because about, able, there's all sorts of words, of all sorts of letter combinations that are AB. Probabilities, here's one here, AB, right there for us, okay? What's the probability of AC together? Well, there's probably quite a bit of AC together as well. I won't do it now, but if even I was to do a search on this page for AC, we would probably find hundreds of those combinations. What's the probability of Q appearing next to the letter Q? None, or very low, or next to the letter J, very low. But what about the letter U? Well, there's a very high probability of that. So what happens then is that the model starts to put longer, instead of having these randomized letter locations, it starts to put them together. So cuconum, that could be a word. Like if you were learning English for the first time, you spoke, a different language, you might think, well, that's kind of got all the rules for it. It's becoming more realistic. Now, there are 40,000 reasonably commonly used words in English. So for a model to do this guessing game, it's actually quite simple to just kind of put all these letters together. And it's read the corpus, a few million books, so billions of words, hundreds of billions of words, etc. We can get an estimate of how common each word is. And then we start to say, well, here are these words. So by itself, it doesn't really mean much. It's nonsense, as Stephen's saying here. It's nonsense. But how can we do better? Just like with letters, we can start taking into account not just probabilities for single words, but probabilities for pairs or longer n-grams of words. So cat through shipping variety has made the aid emergency. Can the cat for the book flip? We're starting, it's still garbage, but it's starting to make more sense. So you can see now, I'll just skip over this slide. Oh no, I want to go back to this slide. Okay. This was an interesting point that I was sort of just chatting with Jeff about, and I was sitting here when I was doing this presentation, when I was starting to practice it before I went to San Diego, and I was sitting here, and because my eyesight's not very good these days, I was going, that looks a lot like a QR code to me. So there's all this conjecture about how are people going to put a watermark on, how are people going to watermark? There's this conjecture that, OpenAI has said that they're going to start working on watermarking text because, of course, there's all this furor about exams, students doing exams and just using ChatGPT to write their tests and their exams. And so the education industry obviously is up in arms about it and saying, well, how do we now test that people haven't used ChatGPT to write it because it's virtually undetectable. As you saw from my other screenshots, you can just change a few things and it can't be detected, right? And I was looking at this and I was thinking, that's a QR code. And if I was to apply the QR code to my style of writing, so the way I write, I use very particular words. Particular is a favorite word of mine, or specific is a favorite word of mine. Whereas someone else will use other words to me. Their vocabulary will be different to mine. So if we were to create a little QR code that looked like a barcode of how I write versus how, say, Leanna Patch writes, then you would see they would be a different blur. Do you see what I mean? They would be a different QR code. They would be a different pattern. So totally making it up. I have no idea at all. But I have this vibe that my probability, my little engram, my engram chart, that's a plot, but this one here is more complex. Mine's going to look really different to Leanna Patch's, to Jeff's, to Andrew's, to Audrey's, to whomever. So that was just a little thing that I sort of saw and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. Anyway, so I think that's maybe how we're going to do it. Anyway, let's go on to the next thing. So Midjourney is a tool that allows you to create images. So if we think of ChatGPT as a letter guessing engine and ultimately a word guessing engine, and then ultimately a sequence of words guessing engine, and then ultimately a sentence guessing engine, Midjourney is a tool that allows you to create images. I'll just show you I'll show you a picture here. Midjourney is a pixel guessing engine. So I just asked Midjourney to create a cat. Let's fit. I'll do fit. Sorry. technology, still learning. So I asked Midjourney to create a cat, gave it a very simple instruction. Midjourney thought, well, I'll put a few pixels here, and then it thought, well, I'll fill in a few more pixels because I kind of know what an eye looks like, and then, well, I'll fit in a few more pixels here because now I know what like an eye really looks like. Let me just go in a bit closer. And so you can see how fuzzy this all is here. That's just the alphabet soup. That's just the pixel soup. Whereas when we get to here, see all the fur through here? So again, it's a model that understands that a cat has I was going to say that it has fur. It doesn't understand that it has fur. What it understands is that the word cat, or the instruction cat, has an association of pixels, and that the pixels belong together in a very particular way. And you can see how the pixels are all kind of a little bit similar down here. The orient, like that, maybe they're going in the opposite direction, but really they're all kind of wavy. So that particular model believes that those pixels all belong together. So this one I said was hand. So I said to it, just make hands for me. Midjourney understands that if I was to say hands, it's kind of a blurry round shape. Well, let's put a little bit more definition. Let's add some more pixels, and the pixels get added into the cracks to create the fingers. And then as it's rendering, a few more pixels get added in, and a few more and a few more. Okay, so it renders as we go. The problem at the moment is that we end up with an image like this, where that person has way too many fingers, and they've even got fingers on the backs of their hand, and their thumbs are kind of dislocated, but just way too many fingers, but orientations. But what it's trying to do is it's trying to guess, where do those pixels belong in relation to the other pixels? Okay, so one of the things that they've just done just last week was fascinating. I'll have to try and find this. I'll find this for the project talks that I'll do. But one of the other fascinating things they did was there's a team that worked out that if you can create an avatar, which is just a line drawing first. I've got a picture of that for you. I wonder if I can get that picture for you. Anyway, if you create a line it's right in my brain. If you can create a line drawing first, then the lines define for Midjourney, for the AI, generative AIs, where the boundaries are for those pixels. So people are now being able to create hands, quite realistic looking hands that don't have way too many fingers, because they are first training it on just basically a drawing, a line art drawing. So it means that, it's learning, only put the pixels inside those very defined lines. So it will get better. It will get better at this over time. This is fascinating. This is a paper by a Japanese team. Again, have I got sometimes I put in, yeah. Here we go. They basically used an fMRI, so an MRI, hooked people's brains up to an fMRI, did a scan, a couple of different processes, used stable diffusion to create images. Okay, so you can read this, and I've deliberately showing this so that you can sort of get these links if you really want to. So you can find these fascinating paper. But what I'll show you is that the idea, that the key point that I want you to understand from this is that they showed the person's wearing a brain cap, measuring the waves in their brains. They showed a picture of a teddy bear, and they basically hooked up the generative AI, various tools and models in between, and that's what it produced. The AI was effectively able to read the brain waves, and we can all agree that that's a teddy bear. This one here is very impressive as well. It's a path, it's got greenery, and it's got a thing at the end of it that's kind of triangle shaped. Green pathy thing. It's got that perspective. This one's great. Look at that. It was able to reconstruct from just the brain pattern. So this is this Japanese team. It's amazing stuff. 2 weeks ago now. Look at what it's able to do. That's a clock tower, right? It's able to read that, and it's able to say, well, I think that the pixels belong here and here. So that's kind of my talk. We then went on to do these 3 projects, but what I'll do is I'll do separate screencasts for that, because this is now this is getting a bit long in the tooth now. But I'll then walk through these 3 projects so that you can just sort of understand, you and your teams can understand how to use it in your businesses. But what I want to do first is I just want to go back to this instance here, and I want to try the new ChatGPT 4 model. So let me just grab this and let's see what happens. So we know what it did before. Okay, so it's going to do that again. Give me 3 more sentence completions. So that's all fine. That's all exactly the same. Let's see. I'll try the dog walking exercise as well. 2 seconds. I'll go and grab that text. Okay, so let's do this one. Write 2 short sentences about walking a dog. That's better. It's more creative. Write 2 short sentences about how to walk a dog. It's being more creative. It's a little bit more like the Bing chat, but it's a little bit more like the Bing chat, and it's a little bit more conversational. So we'll put these into Hugging Face and let's see. Let's do that same experiment. Actually, I could use originality as well. Let's just do that one and see what happens. Look at that. So instead of being 99% fake, it's now predicting it as 54% fake. So it's saying, basically it's saying that it's less predictable. Rewrite the below text, but increase the temperature. Let's see what it does with this. It's very much more creative with the way it's writing. It's really trying to put itself in the world. Let's see how that works out with ChatGPT. So it's still around about the same. If we go back to this one, this example here, see how we said but increase the temperature, right? About walking a dog, but use maximum burstiness and perplexity. Let's see what it does with this. Speaking of, my 10-month-old dog has just trotted into the house, hopefully with nothing that she's about to chew on. Yeah, see, it's very creative, but it's not actually great writing if you just want to know about how to walk a dog. Let's see what it says in here. Yeah, look at that, 0.02% fake. So they're trying to, let me just do that again. Write about how to walk a dog. Increase the temperature to, I don't know, I'm just going to say 0.8. You can actually, or 0.9 because I've typed that. You can actually use numbers to give the AIs your level of how much burstiness and perplexity you would actually like. See, this is like when embarking on a canine adventure, secure the leash to the collar or harness with a whimsical flourish. It's just not useful. Like, I mean, it's kind of like how you would write when you're in like middle school or something and you think you're a really good writer. That's kind of how I look at it. See that? So it's not predictable text, but that's also because it just doesn't quite work. Let's go and try that same thing. Let's just do this one here, and I'll show you how it works in Bing. Hopefully I'm still logged in. You'll just sort of see what the results are like. Hang on. It's just, hang on a second, I'll just reload. 2 seconds, I'll just reload. It's interesting. It's trying to, oh, here we go. No, it's okay. It was kind of taking me, that's interesting. I was scrolling, it was taking me somewhere else. To walk a dog, you need a leash and a collar. You also should bring some bags to pick up after your dog. So let's go and pop that into Hugging Face and just sort of see how predictable. I mean, again, it's not much text, so it's not a great experiment. Write 2 paragraphs about how to walk a dog. Let's see what it does with this, and we'll see. I feel that Bing is giving a more straightforward answer, something that's actually usable. It is more of a search engine. I think that's what's going to happen, is that the two are going to sort of diverge more obviously, where, I'll just see if I can grab this text. This is a good search engine. It's going to become a good search engine, whereas I think that ChatGPT is a very good thing. I'm just going to get rid of these because this will interfere. This will interfere with the prediction. Yeah. See how it's fake? So you wouldn't use Bing to write text. You wouldn't necessarily use Bing to write. Well, you definitely wouldn't. You don't use any of them to actually write articles. Just don't use them to write articles just yet. We're still a long way off that kind of thing. And those phrase tools, Jasper, all those tools, they're still a long way off. But for writing a meta title or a meta description, I think that Bing feels a little bit more predictable and common sense, okay? Whereas ChatGPT number 4, I feel like it's gone the other way. Write 2 paragraphs about walking a dog, about how to walk a dog, I feel like it's gotten a little less predictable, so that those comments about, so the AI detectors, but this is better. To start, you need a sturdy leash. Pointing out. See how the burstiness and the perplexity, it's not sort of just like it's on drugs as it's writing. Psychedelics. So we'll pop this into Hugging Face and have a look. But both ChatGPT, and I'll talk about this in another screencast because I'll end up now, otherwise I'm going to talk to you for too long, but ChatGPT is really great at summarizing complex ideas. It's also excellent at, you've got all this stuff that you hold in your head about what you know in your, in your domain. You know about all this sort of stuff about your particular product or your industry or marketing or whatever it might be. But it's quite hard for you to distill it all and put it all into, okay, I've got to do this and this and this and this. I use ChatGPT to sort of say, okay, I know heaps about organic marketing, all this sort of stuff. But it's quite nice to query it sometimes to go, what can I do for this or what can I do for that? One of the things I'm working on at the moment is we want to sort of work out what are all the conversion mechanisms that we can put into our content for our clients so that we can get people to click from our blog articles through to product pages. I know all these things, right? But to ask ChatGPT, it just makes a list for me and I go, yeah, that one, I'm going to do that one. That one's a great idea. That one's a dumb idea. That doesn't work. But it sort of saves brain power. That's how you can use ChatGPT. It's a brain saver, whereas Bing is really still just a search engine. So it's excellent for research into a topic. Let's pop this one in and then we'll finish up. I'll go back and we'll finish up. Let's pop this one in. It's going to be interesting to see whether this is predictable or not. That's so interesting. Let's go and pop it into this. The reason why it's interesting is normally, I'll just write delete on this one. This is, so originality, Hugging Face, this is a GPT-2, okay? We are using, this is GPT-4. See, the model is GPT-4, whereas this detects GPT-2. Originality was originally detecting 3.5. It's Originality is probably one of the better AI detectors, and as you can imagine, we use this in our team. This was originally for 3.5. And they will be hustling at the moment. These guys will be hustling at the moment to get the GPT-4 into their tool. I'm sure they're working on it right now. But that is fascinating. Look at that. 100% original. And it's, I would read that and say that's good. Like it's got some common sense things. It's not, brilliant, but it's got some common sense things. So it's so exciting. So use Use ChatGPT as a second brain, as like a co-brain, a co-pilot, a co-brain that can help you with things that you already know about very well. It just sort of saves a little bit of brain power. Bing is going to be a really good search engine. I'm going to talk to Jeff about this one. We'll record our meeting and we'll share it with you, and we'll sort of say what we think the future of SEO and search is going to be. I'll come at it from a content perspective, and Jeff will come at it from an SEO perspective. He's doing some really exciting things with AI. And then what I'll also do is in the next sort of a little while, I'll go through each of these 3 projects and walk through. I'll also invite some other people to do some walkthroughs of these as well, so that we can get lots of different perspectives. So that's all for now. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that those of you who attended ECF Live had as good a time as I did, and I hope that I remembered everyone's names and all that, because I was so jet lagged. But I hope to see everyone again in the next ECF Live in New Orleans. But for the moment, any questions, please reach out, and talk to you soon. Bye.